Hello, I'm Liz Sides and I'm a marine biologist. I studied zoology here in Trinity, and then I went on to the University of the West Indies in Jamaica, where I did a master's and a PhD, and I studied brittle stars, which are close relatives of starfishes and sea urchins. And then when I came back to Ireland, I worked in Dublin Zoo. I set up and ran their education programme for 7 years. From there, I moved to Trinity to a really great job for a marine biologist, because it was to do a survey of marine habitats around Ireland. So I have dived around most of the Irish coast. And from there, I moved into the National Parks and Wildlife Service as a scientist, which is now part of the Department of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. And I retired from there last August. And now I'm seeing if I have a creative side, and that's what I'm trying to explore at the moment. One of the things that fascinates me about the scientific world is that you can never know it all, and it's really interesting. And lots of the things that animals and plants do are really fun. They're quirky, you just wouldn't think of them, and there are wonderful, weird shapes. And I'm most interested in how animals interact with each other, and there's just an incredible world out there. As a marine biologist, I think plankton is one of the most fascinating things that you look at. Because I don't study them, when you take a plankton sample, you never really know what you're going to get. And there are just these weird and wonderful shapes that most people never see, most people don't know about. So I thought marine plankton were the thing to do. What I find fascinating about plankton, particularly the plant plankton, is that they have to live in the surface waters where there's sunlight, because they need the sunlight to make their food. To avoid being eaten, they sink during the day, so they sink to a depth where there's still sunlight, and because the animal or zooplankton feed on them, they have to follow them. So they migrate up and down every day, and that's like us running a marathon twice a day. I mean, we think seawater is really easy to swim in, but if you're the size of a plankton, it's like swimming in a really thick syrup. I have to say that of the creatures that I have made, I think probably the crab larva, the zoea larva, is my favourite.
This installation was brought about to let children in the Ark experience what it would be like to fly. So there's 3 different wing types. The smallest ones are the sparrows, and then you have the pigeons, and then the largest ones are the seagulls. Each of the wings are different shapes, because different birds have different shaped wings depending on how far they fly and the distances they fly. So the seagulls ones are very long because they're gliders, and they fly a lot longer distances than the sparrows, which are really small. The wings are also made in very different ways. This is the pigeon's wing, and it was made, I had a pigeon feather and I printed it. So I rolled ink on it and I pressed it down onto paper, and then I drew over it with a pen and then scanned it into the computer. Whereas the seagull ones were feathers that I scanned, and then they were printed on a really big printer, which would be larger than the length of my arms. So you can put on your wings, and then there's 3 different experiences in terms of the flying. The first one is the one behind me, and that is a projector which is coming from the ceiling. And if you stand quite close to the wall and put your arms out, you'll be able to see what shape you would be if you actually had wings. Then the next one is a bed that you can lie down on. It's bright blue, so it's the colour of the sky. And you can lie down on it and look at the mirror. And if you flap your wings in the mirror, you'll be able to see what you would be like if you had wings. And then the final one, you can lie over and you can look at the skies of Dublin, which are moving underneath you. I think it's when art and science come together that's most exciting. So science can be very definite and has a right and wrong answer, and art can sort of change a lot. So it's when those 2 things come together that they work really well. Art can also show us things that we can't see with our own eyes. So when you're looking at drawings of skeletons, that can be really good to see what is actually happening underneath the skin. So that's pretty cool to think about what's happening in your body when you're walking around. And it's the skeletons and the bones of the human body that actually inspired this work. There's loads of different species of birds in Dublin, and I like to watch them and think about what type of bird I would be. And I like to look at the similarities and the differences between our body and the bodies of birds. So that's the two different types of skeletons. So we're actually very similar to birds, except that birds are much lighter, which is why they can fly. Our bones are very heavy, but birds' bones have little pockets. They're hollow, and inside their bones they're like little balloons. So that's why they're able to fly. So maybe one day, if scientists can work out how to make human bones lighter, then we'd be able to fly too.